Peace, peace, peace. Welcome to another episode of Waz the Dome TV. Today, I have a very special guest, man. That I call him the young phenom. You know what I'm saying? You've seen him on Waz the Dome TV. You've seen him on I Never Knew TV. He's an author. He got the new joint that's out now, the Unchained Mind Expanded version. And so the link is in the description. Everybody go and cop that. A lot of the topics that we are going to be discussing now are going to be directly from the book. So if you find this conversation edifying, which I'm pretty sure you will, make sure you go and cop that book. And because it's real, it's real. It's something, especially for these times that we're in now, with everything going on in the world. Instead of the same old conscious community debates that a lot of you guys find attractive. You have to just become politically educated and understand what's happening in this world if you really are about liberation. And Brother Tristan Graham has put out another book that will, take you into a lot of these different topics. So again, I appreciate you for coming through, brother.
Sure, bro, for sure. Sure.
No doubt, no doubt. So let's start from the beginning, man. As I said, we're gonna discuss some of the things that you wrote about in the book. Um, the relationship between capitalism and poverty. Could you elaborate on what you speak about in the book as far as the international, well, first, before we even go there, the relationship between capitalism and poverty as an overview, right? Like if you can just how does the system of capitalism create poverty and how we define poverty all over the world?
So for capitalism to exist, there needs to be poor people.
Mm.
That's one. That's a surety because you need a reserve force of labor wherein the employed folks look at those people as saying, oh, well, at least I'm not where they are.
Mm-hmm.
So that the workers then tend to acquiesce in the wages that they're getting because they're saying to themselves, oh, well, someone out there is unemployed. So no matter what I'm getting paid, at least I'm doing better than that person.
Right.
Right. So poverty is enshrined in the economic foundation, given the fact that only a few control the wealth.
Mm.
The rest of us are just are participants in the economic system. We don't control it. We see where policies are targeted or geared towards the upper echelon of society more within a capitalist economy, given that the motivation behind the economy is profit. That's right. The sole driving force of every capitalist economy, profit. You'll hear politicians talk about how much the economy grew. We're talking about growth. It's not human development, right? It's about corporations who have made a profit, and somehow this section of the economy, as if the economy is not an all-encompassing thing with people and animals and nature and etc. versus just poverty. Those are what they categorize as development, or that's what they call development. In the book, I refer to the first chapter of the book is capitalism and global poverty, and it's key in how we define poverty.
Right.
For example, poverty can be very relative. So many Jamaicans, for example, who think they have wealth, go to America. When they go to America, they realize that they're not rich anymore. They're regular.
Right.
Because the dollar power that they had out here doesn't exist anymore in America because a dollar is a dollar. Right? So when you increase the poverty line to a certain amount of money, for example, I increase the poverty line to around $30 a day, right? A lot of people in the world, billions of people in the world aren't making $30 a day.
Right.
But the poverty line that the UN uses or any outside force or international organization is very low. Very low. It's like $5 or $1, right? And I'm like, but even when you make more than $5, the standard of living requires way more than that.
Right.
So is it a case where those who make $6 an hour are not poor anymore?
Right.
When you draw the poverty line to a certain amount, you will see how many portions of the world population fall into poverty once you raise that standard for monetary upliftment. Right? So in Jamaica, majority of people don't make $30 a day.
Right.
Right? But you wouldn't call them poor in a sense. If you don't look at it like that.
Right.
If you are looking at it that way, then yeah, like there's always this feeling where people become disenchanted from where they're from when they reach certain like levels in life.
Yeah.
Right? A kid might go school, go university or whatever, gets his degree, he feels as if he's made it. But in the real world, bro, you don't have any money in your pocket, you don't control anything. The most you can do is go out there and seek or sell it, or sell a labor essentially, because that's what we have to do. As Marx said that to capitalists, we are beholden to them because we have to sell them our labor to get paid.
Right.
So that's what we have. And I dislike the fact that so many people, especially where I'm from, they are like this, given the fact that they achieved a certain status. I don't know what that status is, but status that they feel as if they have escaped poverty. But really and truly, bro, you're still poor like the rest of us. Like,
right.
We don't control anything here. We are, what do you call it now? Figs in a machine. And that machine will grind you out and throw you away the moment you become useless.
Absolutely.
And people tend to forget that a lot.
Do you think that the international organizations like the United Nations, with influence from the West, have deliberately made that poverty line so low, like as far as $5 a day, so we can't see the world as being in poverty the way it really is?
Of course, there's even a book called The Planet of Slums. Right? I can't remember the author's name right now, but it's literally detailing. For example, where I live in Jamaica, every rich area is what we call uptown is surrounded by a ghetto. Every rich area you can go to, there's a ghetto right around the road.
Right.
You can draw a similarity across continents. Because if you go to Africa, Nigeria, you see me, like there's a similar difference where across the river are these big mansions, and on the other side of the river are these shacks and shanty towns where people live. In Jamaica, you go to Brazil, you have the favelas. Down the road from a favela, you might find a big mansion that some guy who was a footballer built.
Right.
Here we are with these glaring contradictions where there's enormous wealth on this side and enormous degradation on this side. But somehow there's no way that these people on the degrading side can achieve what these people on the wealthy side have, unless, tell you the ways, it's either illegal activities, it's either drugs. You see me? Hence, those are the activities that poor people engage in to get rich. So narcotics, guns, scamming,
or they try their hand in entertainment or athletics.
Any little thing that they can somehow increase their wealth in, they're going to try it. Because then all morality that rich people have, we know when people talk about, why people do this, why people do that, bro, you're not in a position that requires you to do these things. It's not a place where these people would have chosen that if they had another option. They don't have any other options. Hence why they do these things. So rather than pathologizing them, why don't you look at the underlying factors that cause them to behave in this way? Right? Because for me, most criminals are white-collar criminals, right?
Right.
And those are the ones going to prison.
No, not at all.
The low-level drug dealers that you have, those guys aren't the ones in control or anything.
Right.
And some rich white guy or a black guy in whichever country that is controlling the trade.
We saw that here with the story of Ricky Ross, and
Yeah.
like, and then he's the one that end up paying the price for it. When when we look at capitalism and the system of capitalism, and we look at not only like the wealth disparities with people, I was just kind of doing just some light research last week on how the system of capitalism even destroys the environment and the planet in which we live on. And I came across a few articles on the different rainforests in South America and in Africa, and how we know that these are some of the most biodiverse places. Well, they are the most biodiverse places on the planet, um, and they also are the lungs of the planet, right? The obviously the rainforests scientifically are extremely important to just us being able to live, right? And then you see these logging companies and all of these other companies who are getting these contracts from the government, like especially like I want to say it was Brazil some years back,
Yeah.
and where they right, and so like whenever you even think about capitalism on that level, on an environmental level, like what goes through your mind when people say, "Hey, capitalism is the system that's going to free us," when it's literally destroying the planet?
All right. I don't know how a system that finds its birth in slavery can free anyone.
Mm,
Right? The basis of capitalist economies was enslavement.
right.
Like that's how the economies were built across the world. The settler colonial society that we know today, United States, Israel, Australia, like everything, like all the ills that we have with the world can be tied back to capitalist accumulation.
Mm,
There's a quote by Marx where he says that capitalists turn living, no, was it Marx or Michael Parenti? One of them, where capital turns living, breathing resources into dead capital.
mm.
We cut down living, breathing trees that we need for oxygen and etc. to make paper money to hand to somebody that says, oh, well, this is worth this and that is worth that. When in real life, like in real time, what is worth, we can't recoup.
Right, right,
Right? So
right.
when you cut down a tree, bro, and you say you're gonna grow back a tree, like, or you cut down like an entire forest, bro, like that's an entire ecosystem there that you're wiping off the face of the earth,
Mm,
right? And everything on this earth is interconnected.
right, absolutely.
Everything we need, the trees need us, and we need the trees.
Right.
Right? The animals need the trees, we need the animals. Like the moment you take one thing from that ecological system out of play, it everything is thrown out of balance.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If climate change, oh my days, right now Jamaica is like hot. When I was younger, Jamaica wasn't this hot.
Right, 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 right,
Right? And they say it's only going to get hotter from here.
right. Yeah,
And these things aren't because of some Jesus or God
yeah.
or whatever. These things are because corporations, and particularly, and I'll call the U.S. Army or the U.S. Navy a corporation because
Mm-hmm.
that's what it is, right? They are they pollute the world the most.
Oh yeah.
United States Army pollutes the world the most, and I'm not talking about them polluting, or their form of pollution, meaning them having troops all over the world, because that is pollution as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm talking about pollution, like real, like air pollution, water pollution with all the bombs. Like, just imagine they drop bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, right?
Mm-hmm.
Destroy, and bro, they almost they literally basically destroyed a country,
Mm-hmm.
right? To the point where kids from parents who were bombed have cancerous cells inside them to this day.
Right, right.
Right? It's like when you think about the landmines in Vietnam, right? And the maiming of the Vietnamese people that the US soldiers partook in. Panama, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
The Panama deception. When you think about the bombs that they dropped in Somalia through Obama's policies, and when you think about Obama, you can't forget about George Bush
Right.
and bombings in the Middle East and in Africa as well. Like, there is so much that people miss when they're analyzing geopolitics and the remnants of capitalism. Because the driving force behind all of these policies is capital accumulation. They are bombing these places because, oh, well, we just want to bomb them. They're bombing them because they're seeking resources from these regions that can increase their profit motive from whatever company it is. Right? So whenever, like, I always tell people, if you see America on one side, stand on the next.
Wow.
Because that's the only way you're going to be on the good side of history.
Yeah. And while you were saying that, I just wanted to, because I know I saw the article, and I just wanted to, it says, I found an article that I had read a while back, but it says Oxfam's research has found that the emissions from 125 billionaires is more than 1,000,000 times higher than the average emissions created by the bottom 90% of the world's population.
So when they're pushing us about plastic straws and green capitalism, yes, we should do our part to help save the planet, but we aren't.
We're not the main problem.
It is always the people who are the least or who are contributing the least that are punished the most. Right? Like, we are contributing the least to climate change.
Right.
A billionaire, for example, was it Taylor Swift?
Yeah. With the private jet.
Yeah, like, these are the things that are messing up the environment. Stuff like that. Right. It's not you when you're eating your plastic or your plastic straw or whatever. Yeah. It takes a while to break down. But that's not what is causing. It's people flying from New York to Manhattan or from Manhattan to Bronx.
Right. Right. That's crazy, right? Like, yeah, man. You in the book, you also mentioned, and I think it's a very important. This is a very important topic to discuss as well. But you stated that Marx didn't invent socialism or unearth it. If you can, because we've heard Dr. John Henry Clarke echo the same sentiment. But he didn't really expound on it, and he just kind of spoke on it briefly. But if you can go into that some, as far as socialism, the idea of socialism, being actually before Marx's critique on capitalism.
All right, so I'm gonna read a portion of the book.
Yeah, absolutely.
So firstly, it should be acknowledged that Marx did not originate socialism, nor did he unearth it. In his early years as a journalist, the young Marx encountered the term socialism in the works of French author Pierre Leroux, often credited with coining the term, and the German Lorenz von Stein. Right, they were born before Marx, and lived and died before Marx. Even before Marx's birth, around 1785, French philosopher Victor Duhaupe identified himself as a communist author. Right? He aimed to translate the ideas of Enlightenment philosophers into practical implementation. Right? We can find socialism in indigenous ways, in the Iroquois. So, and Marx studied them extensively, which is many people stop at Marx at the Communist Manifesto, Das Kapital, and Capital and Labor, I think is Wage, Labor, and Capital. They normally stop there.
Well, that's what I kind of wanted you to expound on as well, like, because you mentioned this in the book about the Iroquois and about different groups in Africa, and I think that's an important concept for us to kind of bring to light.
For sure. So the Iroquois, he and Engels studied the Iroquois because he was very fascinated by by communal societies across the world.
Mm-hmm.
Hence, his ideas of communism were developed based on these observations.
Mm.
But he saw that there was a way for people to live like this.
Mm-hmm.
So when people come to me with the idea that communism will never work or socialism will never work, and I give them these examples, they're like dumbfounded. I'm like, bro, the world you know is around this big.
Right.
Yes, when you start reading, the world becomes like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because things that you thought did not exist, you will find are commonplace in many societies.
Right.
I.e., the idea of communal sharing.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if you look at like Islam, because Marx studied Muslim scholars as well, because in those times the main economic or the major economists were formerly Muslim.
Mm.
So you have Ibn Battuta or Ibn Khattab, right? Where his and Marx's philosophy or economic philosophy were similar.
Mm.
Where, for example, in Islam, you know that there should be no interest.
Right. Right. Right.
Islam posited that centuries before Marx.
Right. Right.
Right? The idea of zakat,
Mm-hmm.
for the poor, like like
Yeah.
selflessness, charity, all these things, right? And it's also that excess in any form is a sin.
Mm. Right.
So you don't take more than you need
Right.
at any point in time. But of course, over the years, people have become, disillusioned, and they just
Yeah.
capitalism kicks in when everybody just trying to get for themselves.
And so no, and I'm glad you put this in the book because I think it's something even a lot of leftists might not even know about as far as indigenous communities in the global South and their communal ways of living before Marx was even a twinkle in his father's eye, right? When we like so whenever you hear the idea of socialism being the white man's ideology, right? Like, what are your what are your thoughts on that? Because yeah, I know you've heard it before. We've seen it in these debates and the discussions that we had.
First of all, I always refer back, or I always refer to the Kwame Ture video,
Mm.
right? And I even use Afrocentric scholars' own words.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, in the book, I have a quote by Shekanta Diop from Civilization and Barbarism, where he says that most of the ideas that we all call foreign are oftentimes nothing but mixed up, reversed, modified, elaborated images of creations of our African ancestors, such as Judaism, Christianity, Islam, dialectics, the theory of being, fact sciences, and arithmetic.
What's hold on before you even expound. What's so dope about that is people who have that book, we all have that book, have probably read it 100 times and stopped with Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, and didn't peep the dialectics part. But go ahead.
Dialectics is in ancient Kemetic philosophy. You can invent that. As Kwame Ture says, the most people can do is observe it and write it down.
Right.
In Newton's speech, in Kwame Ture's speech, he speaks about Newton, saying that Newton didn't discover gravity.
Right.
He saw an apple fall from a tree, wondered what that phenomenon was, and gave it a name. I've told people, labels don't mean that a phenomenon does not exist. Something can exist and not have a name. It's not until you put a label on it is when people start to acknowledge it. Right. So that it doesn't exist.
Right.
So dialectics has always existed.
Right.
It's not until Europeans decided that, oh, well, this is dialectics now, is when people start to recognize it. But if you are an Afrocentric scholar, if you are studying the history of ancient African societies, these things that you see now, you will find them in the history. Right? You will find Imhotep. You will find Ibn Battuta, the poet. Like there's so many like economists, philosophers, and thinkers in Africa before Marx and them that record these kinds of things, and they're all in the book as well.
And
Right?
so do you think that like during the time of the African independence movements, as you had the Casablanca group and the Monrovia group, but the Casablanca group at one time was the group that was really, in my opinion, I can't speak on popularity, but we know many of them were the heads of state in the newly formed independent nations. But do you think that is why it was so easy for them to take to socialism, because it was already like because they saw similarities between that and communal African way of living?
Yeah, and I think it was mostly because everyone attached capitalism to slavery. So
Yeah,
capitalism was attached to
yeah,
slavery and colonialism.
right,
In
right,
order to get rid of those two things, you can't use a capitalist framework.
right.
Many of
Facts.
them, even though some of them weren't outrightly anti-capitalist, but they weren't socialist at the same time. But they were just left-leaning
Hmm.
because they knew that capitalism could not bring about the society that they wanted. So in Tanzania, you can look at Julius Nyerere and his Ujamaa philosophy,
Hmm.
right? You can look at Nkrumah in Ghana, right? And his usings of some semi-socialist policies.
Hmm.
Sankara, all out socialist policies, right? You look at a personal favorite of mine, Amilcar Cabral,
Absolutely.
his revolution in Guinea, where he's literally telling you, bro, like the culture that we have now needs to change completely.
Hmm.
Sankara said the same thing. If you read Women's Liberation and the African Freedom Struggle, where he speaks about prostitution being a deep or deeply entrenched in capitalism. And he's saying that it's not only the women that should be ashamed of themselves for participating in such activities, but it's the men who enable these activities to happen, because without them, first of all, for a market to thrive, you need demand.
Right.
If nobody's doing it,
Hmm.
then they're going to stop. So the fact that women are doing it, are going and are paying, etc., it means that it's going to be perpetuated because these women have no other avenue of escape
Hmm.
beyond that.
Right.
Right? So it's for the men now to look upon themselves and say, "Yo, wait, no,"
Right. Right.
and
Right.
then that market will die out completely. So it's things like these that push them as leftist figures in Africa, because we as Africans across the world look upon these leaders with great admiration,
Hmm.
right? Because of the things that they did. And when you look at the things that they did and studied, you can't help but be anti-capitalist in all forms.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Anti-imperialism, all forms. Anti-colonialism, all forms of colonialism, settler and otherwise.
Right.
Right? These are things that, for me now, have become natural inclinations.
Hmm.
Like I can't see something like that and not say anything.
Oh yeah.
And not try to explain it to other people, because I don't want you to become or I don't want you to remain ignorant of the world,
Right.
because we all and we all have to operate in the world, and I
Right.
want you to be on the right side of history.
But
I don't want
what what's funny about that is like within, and obviously this is purposely done, but universities like I see. All right, so like universities, especially like when it comes to economics, they don't teach any other system outside of capitalism. So you have these people who have PhDs in economics who don't know anything about any other form of economy outside of capitalism. We can see that with the rhetoric that Dr. Boyce says on the timeline all the time, right? And it's like this idea that this idea that and we're speaking of, and since we're African people, we are obviously speaking on our community, first and foremost. But this idea that black capitalism
Yes.
will somehow free us, right?
Circulating the black dollar. Oh,
Yeah, it's crazy, and not realizing or understanding that this was something in America that was used to slow down the Black Power movement and implemented by Richard Nixon, and so we keep talking about, it's funny, right? Because the same people that'll say, ideas of socialism are European, but capitalism isn't European. Like,
and capitalism hasn't even worked for
it
Europeans.
don't even work for white people. You know what I'm saying? Like, it don't even work for white people. And that's the thing. And so, like, this idea of black capitalism being a means to liberation, right? And you see all of these people now, with their crypto experts, their stock experts, they are, everybody's flipping houses, everybody's, all of
Because all of them are grifters.
yeah, yeah, they are. They are.
Because liberation has now become, again, capitalism can co-opt a lot.
Mm.
So capitalism has co-opted many liberation or liberatory ideas on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
So like at its core, it can never capture it. On the
Right.
surface, it can. Because there are people like Dr. Boris Watkins, Thomas Sowell, who is in the book as well.
Yeah, I peeped.
I debunked you see all that black
Yeah,
stuff that's in
yeah,
the book. Just
yeah.
read it. I think it's chapter 10.
Mm-hmm.
That debunked completely. And I debunked that from the first book.
And you mentioned Thomas Sowell.
Yeah.
Like, I noticed that we are coming into a time, especially with people spending a lot of time watching things on YouTube, right? And uh, people are seems like the what would be considered the quote unquote conscious community sometimes in some section of it, it seems to be steering off to these Republican type talking points and ideologies, right? And I noticed this big push with, oh man, y'all need to be reading Thomas Sowell. And I'm like, what? Like, of all the great African thinkers that we have,
Thomas Sowell.
yeah, what, like, this is the one that y'all like. And for people who may be watching this show who don't know who Thomas Sowell is and what he stands for, yeah, yeah, right. If you can, let the people know like who he is and some of the ideas that he pushes. And it was funny before you even go there. If you watch with a keen eye, he's not really even pushing these ideas to African people. He's talking to white folks about African people, right?
Yes, and he's talking about us like he's not black or
Facts.
he's the other. Like, yeah,
Right.
those people over there, they are doing this because and they need to do this because XYZ. But yes, so in the book I say, given the gargantuan volume of Sowell's popular writings, because he writes a lot, and the majority of it is rubbish. Right? This is it. This is it. So I'm going to break it down, right?
Mm-hmm.
The primary books I'm addressing are Discrimination and Disparities and Black Rednecks and White Liberals, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've broken down what I see to be the central cluster into the constitutive claims in order to deal with them in sequence. Disparities don't prove discrimination, particularly between Black, white communities in America. Black Americans, especially the worst off living in urban areas, have redneck culture that was handed. These are his arguments.
Yeah.
That was handed down to them by white Southerners via Britain. These behavioral patterns are exacerbated by the interventions of the welfare state. He loves talking about welfare state and how the welfare state ruined America. A whole lot of rubbish.
He downplays slavery a lot too.
Yeah. Oh, he literally tries to say that because like out of the millions of black slaves that there were, if 5 of them owned slaves, oh wow,
Yeah,
black
yeah,
people
yeah.
slavery too.
Right,
Like what, bro? Like so so ultimately his points come down to this: black people are blameworthy for their inequality.
Mm.
So he's always focusing on behavior,
Mm-hmm.
like how black people behave. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's what he doesn't realize is that anybody who studies African history and blackness can see clear eye that he's completely anti-black.
Mm-hmm.
Like you like if we breathe a certain way, oh yeah, that's why you guys are poor
Right.
because you breathe this way. Like so, anyways, I'm gonna read a short paragraph from his dumb arguments. So one of the big payoffs to this entire line of Sowell's arguments, which is culture, behavior, and inequality, is that culture and behavior are the causes of the continuation of black-white disparities in economic outcomes. So he blames our culture, right? So I'm going to ask you now, right? As a sensible person talking to a sensible person, what underscores your culture? What is your culture based off of, if not the economic foundation that you guys are on? If you're poor, your culture is not going to be the same as somebody who is rich.
Absolutely.
You guys are living completely different lives. The way you're living is completely different. The things that you find enjoyment in, they might not.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't understand how that in itself is an explanation for inequality. Like,
no.
I don't understand. And then he tries to use his us now, Caribbean people who come to America, against Black Americans, saying that when we come to America, it's because and do well, it is because of our culture. It is not. It's because people who move to America from our region are richer than those in America.
Right, right.
Bro, majority of Jamaicans who migrate are not poor.
Mm.
Like, I'm talking about like migrate, like officially, they are not poor.
Right.
They are from a certain class within our society. Right? When they go to America, the class traits that they have in our society obviously going to filter over. Right? Because their idea or how they grew up, right, in Jamaica is of a rich or more affluent or more fortunate standing. Right? So it's not because our culture is somehow more focused on education. Right? Because I tell people all the time, our schools are a lot better than American schools because we learn stuff faster. Like stuff I learning grade 5, Americans are learning grade like 8. Right? But the thing is, a lot of people get left behind here. So the education system is moving fast. So if you're not fast, left.
Right.
A lot of people get left. You get me? So and that's a whole. So again, he doesn't even know our culture enough. Talk about it and more so to use it as a comparison to American culture.
And also, doesn't that show, like you said, many of the Jamaicans that come to the United States have money already, and they come from a certain class. But doesn't that show on Thomas Sowell's part a lack of any real in-depth class analysis?
That's the thing. Nothing he says is in depth at all. He just talks a lot.
Right.
You see, all right. So people who don't know anything, these people are smart because they talk a lot of things that sound good.
Yeah.
But for those of us who have the knowledge and know stuff, it's total rubbish. Like we can't sit down and that at any point in time. Right. So, like first, and his whole gimmick is that he's a former Marxist that gained common sense.
Right.
That's he tells himself, you know.
Yeah.
That's what he tells himself to white people.
Right.
Well, I was a Marxist that saw the light.
Right.
I was once a Marxist and I realized that it was foolishness. And I like, bro, any actual Marxist is going to look at you and say, yo, you're never a Marxist then, because there's no way you can go from that to this.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Right.
Because if you're a Marxist, like, bro, sometimes I'm talking to people, just a regular conversation, and some stuff they're saying, like, I just can't stay and listen. Because I know it's wrong, but I know they don't know what I know. So I don't want to tell them and they get offended because a lot of people are offended by knowledge.
Oh yeah.
Especially people who know more than them, they don't want to be around their thought.
Yeah.
And they're very quick to chastise. Like I always tell people, one of the worst things you can do to me is try to insult my intelligence.
Right. Same here, man. Same here.
That's
I don't like that shit at all. Because look, we live in a capitalist society where we have to get out there and hustle for food, clothing, and shelter. We have to take care of people. We have to, and we still find time to study and read. And within all of this, so don't disrespect this path that we on. You know what I'm saying? Because
yeah.
it ain't for the faint of heart, man.
And especially when it's somebody who don't know anything.
Yeah.
Like, that's the worst type. Like somebody who's just talkative, but don't know.
Well, this whole Kanye West free thinker shit, you know what I'm saying, without reading books. You know what I'm saying? Like
I remember I spoke to somebody once and they're like, yo, like so he asked me like why I read books. And I said to gain knowledge. So I said, so he said to me, so what if you don't read, you can't get knowledge? And I'm like, not necessarily, but the primary way you got knowledge is through reading. You like reading anything because I think reading is just a book that you have in your hand. It could be you read a map, like you find out where X and X is, like, right. And you make a connection from something that you saw. Like, analyzing the world is so, or for me, it's very easy. Right, because I can make connections with the simplest things, like because your knowledge is so vast that what you have in your head and what you're seeing, you're able to instantly.
Because you've expanded your reference point.
Exactly. So some things that you thought weren't normal, because you know this now, you're like, oh wait, here's an example of where it happens. Here's an example of where that happens. Right? So all right, another, like I tell people that Cabral studied communal society in Guinea-Bissau, right? And he saw societies that were classless in Guinea-Bissau. Wow. Indigenous communities that were like none of that, and it's in his work as well. So if anybody, trust me, check out Amilcar Cabral. Brilliant. Absolutely.
Right.
Brilliant. Right? And when I saw that, I was like, when I found out, I was like 21, because I was one of those people that was like, yo, communism can't work. So when I hear these things, I know the arguments are coming already, because I was one like that. You get me? So when I saw it, I'm like, no, there's no way. Like, what do you mean? Like, everybody just did it. Is it? It's there, bro.
Right. Yeah. And it kind of this kind of reminds me also too, just taking it back a little bit to Thomas Sowell attempting to make a connection between culture, behavior, and inequality. And it's funny because Candace Owens is with her attempted rebrand is even still saying the same things. Like she'll say that we are in the position that we are in because children out of wedlock, or we are in the position that we are in because of hip-hop music. Yeah, these things, right? But will never address capitalism, white hegemony, none of that. You know what I'm saying?
Never talk about Jim Crow laws.
Right.
He'll never talk about the bombing of Move in Philadelphia.
Nope.
He'll never talk about the CIA campaign against the Black Panther Party, against the Nation of Islam, against all forms of liberation, except they only talk about Black Lives Matter.
Right.
Oh,
that's the only movement we ever had, right?
Only movement. They'll never talk about Black Lives Matter. Right? They'll never talk about any other others. They'll never talk about George Jackson. They'll never talk about the bro, like oh bro, I see, because I know these things, I can't listen to these people talk.
Right. But people are falling for it, brother. And that's the thing that I don't understand, because like they were on the, she was platformed on the Joe Budden podcast, then the Breakfast Club, and then she puts out like an Instagram message saying that, you know, for years, white media attempted to turn the black community against her. Like, no, they didn't. No, we saw you for what you
We
were,
saw
yo.
you for the ignoramus.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, in your book, you know, I think, I mean, what a wonderful book, man. Everybody got a cop, you know what I'm saying? I know that I know they will, because it's definitely you know, great information in there. But you have a chapter on fascism. And so when we look at fascism within an American context, you mentioned that fascism is not an anomaly, but rather inherent in the American project. Uh, could you elaborate on the idea, you know, especially during with the rise of Trumpism and all of this, and many people thinking that uh, because, you know, we hear the term post-Trump America often as if this was founded by him. You know what I'm saying? But if you can expound on that some.
All right. So what you said last about Trumpism, that's a Democrat response to gain votes. Right? So that's a democratic thing, the slang that they like to use. But anyways, many people don't know that Hitler studied American society to come up with his laws. Right? The Nazi race laws, the Nuremberg laws. He studied Jim Crow laws to make those.
Right.
He literally quotes in Mein Kampf, and it's in the book as well, in Mein Kampf, where he states that he literally wants to create that America has perfected his version of the ideal society. Imagine that. He sent lawyers to America to study them, to study the laws in America. He sent lawyers to study there. So imagine that. The great evil that is Hitler learned from somebody else.
Right.
To enact his laws.
Right.
But somehow, the country that murdered an entire indigenous group, the country that went or goes around the world bombing everybody, the country that participated in slavery, even after slavery was being abolished, right? The country that formulated Jim Crow laws, right? So think about it. Jim Crow was there before apartheid South Africa.
Absolutely.
So, like, just think about that. And look at how we look at apartheid South Africa. Look at how we look at Nazi Germany.
Right.
But there was a person there that was doing way worse things before them. But somehow this nation is democratic and free and liberal and etc. Like America alone, first of all, there's no empire that is not fascistic. All empires are fascistic. Right? Going back to Great Britain. If you want to look at Britain, the empire on which the sun never sets.
Right.
It's the empire. Because you have a king and queen that's going around murdering millions of people. Right? And killing off indigenous populations. What more do you need?
Right. Right.
What Hitler did in Germany, he practiced first in Africa. Right? Many people don't know that. It's in the book as well. Right? So, like, there's so many, like, many of the companies that funded Hitler were American-based companies.
Right.
Like, when the Olympics was being held in Nazi Germany, America knew what Hitler was doing. But they didn't care because, you know, they wanted to stay in his favor. Not only until Hitler became an existential threat to them. Right. When they decided, yo, this guy needs to go. Right. They do the same thing with so-called terrorists. So look at Bin Laden. They hired Bin Laden to fight against the Soviets in Afghanistan, what they were called the Mujahideen at first. When he fought against the Soviets and he got them out of the country, because America was afraid that socialist influences were going into the Middle East. They didn't want that. So when they employed the so-called most wanted man on earth, which is what he became for them, when they employed him, they weren't thinking about that.
Right. Right.
But Bin Laden saw that it was hypocrisy because after he kicked them out, the US moved in. And he's like, hey, what's going on? And like, he's like, bro, just leave us alone. Like, I did this job for you, leave me alone. America's like, no.
Right. Right.
They bring in all the liberal, so-called liberal ideals or whatever it is to the Middle East or whatever. And Milan was like, yo, I'm not going to stand for this. You think I have beef with Russia? Let's see what I'm going to do to you.
Right.
And again, who is framed as the bad guy here? Not the one who employed the terrorist at first, you know.
Right.
The terrorist, or it's the guy who reacts that is a terrorist.
That propaganda machine for America to promote the idea of American exceptionalism is a heavy propaganda machine, bro.
I'm another perfect example. Like, and these are things that we hear, but we don't actually process how insane it is. America has the most number of incarcerated people in the world. The land of the free. Mine, you know, their whole brand is the land of the free, and they have the largest prison population in the world.
Right.
The country is not even the largest country in the world.
Right. Right.
I doubt it's even top 5. Doubt it's even top 5.
And I did a show last week with Renee, who is you know, talks about police abolition and the prison industrial complex, and not only and the fact that we have the highest prison population in the United States of America. Many people don't even see how that ties back to the system of capitalism and slavery and prison, and not even just the prison for profit, not even just the private prisons, even the state prisons. It all, you know, I was watching, bro. I can't remember whether it was, I think it might have been Louisiana or Alabama, and it was a small town, a small town mayor, and they didn't really have anything but the prison there, right? And he was like, "Yeah, man, we gotta keep that prison full." Like, imagine approaching crime and punishment.
Yeah, because prison is a profit industry.
Yeah.
So agencies get contracts, and to fulfill those contracts, they need prisoners. So they pass some archaic law. You break that law, you go to prison.
Yep.
I can't remember the name of the corporation, but they do the same thing for Israel as well. Is it APAC?
Yeah. Well, no, that I know they fund all the they got all the politicians.
They write a lot of the bills that pass in Congress. So sometimes people hear about a politician writing a bill, they got that bill from a corporation. And the corporation is just using them to enact that policy.
Right.
They can then use it to gain some better profit share or get a contract or something, whatever it is. Right? Bro, the price that you pay to open a prison or run a prison, you can build like 10 schools.
Right. Right.
Like, you can create workshops. There's so many
community centers, all types of things, man.
Like, America spends more on prison and bombs than it does on education and healthcare.
Right. Right.
To show you how backward and fascistic the society is, that most of your money is being spent on either killing, re-enslavement, because that's what prison is for, right? Bombing, re-enslavement, and that's pretty much America.
What did Pac say? You got money for war, but can't feed the poor.
Feed the poor, exactly.
You know?
And there's a famous Pac video where he's saying, if I know that there's rich guys up there, right, and I'm hungry and they have all the food, and I knock on the door, no one answers. I knock on the door again, no one answers. I start knocking it harder, no one answers. Belly's growling now. So you start shouting and knocking on the door, no one answers. He then asks, like, what is the logical conclusion of somebody who's hungry and knows there's food in there, but the person's inside aren't answering?
Right.
You're going to beat down the door and take food.
Right.
because they've been trying for so long to get your attention to say, yo, can I have, like, just ask, like, can I have some food, or whatever. But you don't care enough about their humanity. Even open the door and answer them. So why in the world are they going to care about yours when they've been down the door and what they want? Because they've been trying for so long, like, and that's what people and Black liberation is that's where it had. I believe it's at a standstill, because people want change until it's time to change.
Yeah.
And I've spoken to many people who show an interest in it, but when I get them in deep into the politics, it's like, all right, this might be it might be too much. I'm like, other way do you think you're gonna come? Because you've been in the same scenario for years. Right? And you've tried all the pacifist measures.
Right.
Voting, protesting, social media awareness, all of those nice things that liberals and upcoming academics like to do. Isn't it? There's nothing wrong with it. Right? But I'm saying there has to be something beyond that. Like,
absolutely.
It can't just stop there. Like,
organizing, being and
because one, the state is very powerful.
Absolutely.
So you have to be organized enough and strong enough to go against the state. Right? And at the moment, there are very few organizations that are able to do that.
Right.
And still, we have, as Fred Hampton would say, a vanguard. Yeah, Kwame loves talking about the vanguard too. And until you have a vanguard party that is able to organize and mobilize a large portion of people supporting the same cause, we'll be in a standstill and we'll be doing a BLM over and over again.
Absolutely. But that's, again, like how we talked about earlier, that's the importance of reading and studying. I mean, don't get me wrong, even if your heart is in the right place, you still have to have some level of understanding about what it is we are fighting in the first place. And again, like you lay it out, you lay a lot of these topics out great in this book. And one is when you talked about fascism, and you stated that socialism is the only real resistance to fascism, right? And some may not agree because they have this idea of, through capitalism, one day they may be rich, or one day we'll build another Tulsa, Oklahoma, or
But the thing is, I had an article on Tulsa. Most of the people in Tulsa were poor.
Yeah, that's rich. That's a fact.
Like
they don't talk about the class issues within these quote unquote Black Wall Streets that we've had.
People in Tulsa were janitors and etc. They weren't what people make it out to be, like there was this rich utopia of Black people that existed. No, it was working class people coming together to form a neighborhood of subsistence that they could maintain. So Tulsa was more about working class communion more so than it was about Black capitalism. The Black capitalists are the ones that try to make it about like, some fantasy life. Like, no, bro. Like, if I looked at the records for the Tulsa massacre, and the people there were largely in menial jobs. But the thing is, menial jobs around that time could sustain a family.
Absolutely.
And sustain one now. But hey, but the thing, like, people need to stop looking at history and projecting the present. Right? Because it's not the same. Like, the culture is not the same. The economy is not the same. And from those two things are not the same, the whole basis of your analysis has to be rearranged.
Yes.
Because you can't look at it the same way you're looking at it in the present moment. Because those ideals and ideas never existed back then, bro. Like, Imagine going to Tulsa and telling them, "Oh, your granddad was a black capitalist and he was rich, blah blah." The person there look at you like, "What is a black capitalist?" Like,
Right. Right. It was no, that's real. And also too, like, I'm not sure as much about Tulsa, but I know in Durham, Durham, North Carolina, another Black Wall Street, there became some class issues with the Black elite attempting to be the voice of the whole entire Black community. And they don't always have the best interests of the entire Black community, um, at hand. I'm not saying that was for all of them, but I'm saying these are issues that did arise. And so when we look at these things, like you stated, we have to look at it with an analytical eye and not be so romantic about it. Don't get me wrong, we can be proud of our
sure, be
history
proud.
of
Yeah.
our, yeah, but we gotta still be real, because without that we won't see where we went wrong at. We won't see what, you know what I mean, what things worked for us. But the thing that I wanted to ask you is this two-part question. Your idea of socialism being one of the only resistance to fascism, and also expounding on how you did in the book, state-sanctioned violence in fascist regimes being a tool used to control the people.
All right. So in the book, all right. So this chapter was inspired by George Jackson.
Mm. Blood
That's
in my eye. Yeah,
that's
man.
my Blood in My Eye, one of the best books I've ever read.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Me too.
So in delving into the emergence of monopoly capitalism, George Jackson echoed the later theoretical insights of Malcolm X, recognizing an inevitable conflict between the oppressed and their oppressors.
Mm.
So this is where the state sanctioned violence comes in now.
Mm-hmm.
When people go to protest, they're afraid of the police. Right? The police don't work for me and you. The police work for the state.
Right.
If we're going against the state, the police is going to go against us.
Mm.
Right? And violence is legal and sanctioned as long as it is given approval from the government.
Mm-hmm.
The government says, yo, if any person crosses this line, shoot first. It's legal. It's completely legal, but it's not good.
Mm-hmm.
But it's legal.
Mm-hmm.
State sanctioned.
Right.
Because a policeman can kill you and he doesn't go to jail.
Right.
But I can't kill somebody and not go to jail.
Right.
Or charged, because my standing within the state is not of one in which I have the authority of the state to do that. Right? So, in it, I say, as capitalism evolves, with monopoly capitalism becoming its mature form, the effective counter to the ensuing fascism lies in socialism. This entails the development of radical democratic economies where the means of production are owned by people and operated for the collective benefit of society. Such a transformative approach aims to eliminate the brutal competition for basic human needs that capitalism has perpetuated for an extended period. Socialism, as the antithesis to the default conclusion of capitalism, which is fascism, must evolve as a robust response to the escalating levels of capitalist brutality witnessed in the contemporary landscape. This brutality encompasses an arsenal of weaponry and resources,
Mm-hmm.
along with the determination to inflict mass environmental and human destruction on an unprecedented scale.
Mm.
What we are seeing in the world today is unprecedented.
Right.
Literally, a forest will go on fire for like 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That is not normal. That doesn't happen like in any other period in history.
Right.
But because the environment is so like messed up because of capitalist accumulation, like nature itself is responding in a way that is unprecedented, bro. Like some stuff we see, like we're like, what? Like, how in the world that happened? Like, bro, I like, all right, maybe because I'm in Jamaica, but I don't think Americans know how hot it is, like in the tropics. Like, it's and guess what? the countries that produce the highest levels of CO2 aren't the ones being affected.
Right.
It's us, the small islands, the smaller countries that we produce a fraction of the CO2 that they produce are impacted the most.
Right. Right.
Just like with capitalism. I mean, or just like with an American society, when the stock market crashes, it's not the rich people who are affected the most. It's the poor people who have to sell their houses or start renting again or whatever. Right?
I saw an article where when last year when Bitcoin was tanking, uh, um, an article written about how that affected Black people way harder than it affected anybody else, because we were looking at it as a means of like like this might save us type shit. Like a lot of that shit is like survival, you know what I'm saying? Where they have excess capital to invest, take a loss, that type of thing. Like, it's one of those things that it always, like you said, capitalism, through the system of capitalism, is always going to, if anything goes wrong, it's always going to affect the poor and working class to a higher degree than anybody else.
Dr. Jared Ball speaks about this Bitcoin phenomena a lot. Like he goes in on the Black capitalists like every chance he gets.
Right.
Every chance.
And I had him on the show, and it's funny because how we mentioned Boyce continues to critique his book, but he won't have a Boyce Watkins.
Boyce Watkins is critiquing Dr. Jared Ball.
Just a clip, but he won't read the book. And no critique, right? He's he's tweeting two sentences about something that he never read, you know what I mean? And that goes to show how unserious a lot of these grifters are.
They do that to Tommy Curry as well.
What'd you say?
They do the same for Dr. Tommy Curry.
Oh, yeah. I see that on the timeline a lot. Man. They misconstrue what he says. They won't offer any real analysis on it. It's
and when he responds, all of a sudden everyone goes ghost.
I peeped that too. Brother Tristan, man. It's always, you know what I'm saying, dope to have these bills with you, bro. Everybody make sure y'all cop this book. I know, like, just from the conversation, y'all know that this book got some shit, man. And so y'all definitely gotta cop that, man. Support a young author as well that's doing this thing for the people, because it's important that we do that, man. And just keep shining, bro. Like I'm always proud of the different levels that you continue to achieve, bro. And my hat's off to you.
Appreciate it, brother. I appreciate it.
No doubt.
And thanks again for the opportunity. They can find the book on Amazon, and if not, they can contact me directly wherever they are in the world. I'll get the book to them.
No doubt. Let them know what your socials are in case they have to contact you there.
All right. So Instagram, it's Tristan DC for life, DC4L. Twitter, it's Tristan G300. Yeah, I think that's it. Those are really the socials I use. So yeah.
For sure.
I also have my second book. It's Democracy and Governance. Perspective from the Caribbean. I co-authored that book with a lecturer of mine, Donovan Johnson. My chapter in it is on COVID-19 and liberal democracies, and how COVID-19 has reshaped our idea of liberal democracies. So check it out. It's on Routledge.
Yeah, dope. That sounds interesting. Well, until the next time, bro, man, you have a good one and be easy out there, bro.
All right, bro. Eid Mubarak.